Hello, hello, hello. Can you see me? Why? There we go. I'm like, all of a sudden I see a lot of people. How's everybody doing? Thank you for all of the messages as to where you're from. I'm watching those now, so thank you for that. Again, I love it. Ooh, Zimbabwe. Ooh, cool. Here's what I want to do. Before I warm up into today's topic, which is how do you build a fasting lifestyle? I want you to put in the chat what you have learned so far. What is it that you've noticed or any ahas you had before you came in to this webinar that you are excited about? To me, I always love, we have two systems, cool. I always love when I sit in a seminar and there's a lot of information that comes in and I might know much of that information, but then there's like one little nugget that like shows up and it blows my mind and like changes my perspective. So I'm downloading a lot to you all. And really, if you walk out of here with one little thing that you do differently, or you do with your patients or your clients differently, it was worth the time. Hold on. Hold on. I have somebody at the door. One moment. Hi. Okay, I'm on a webinar and I'm leading it. You can come in. Yeah, okay. Okay. So sorry about that. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through everything that we learned up until now, and then I'm going to talk to you about how do you apply this not just to yourself, but how do you apply this to your patients if you're working with patients. So I call it a fasting lifestyle, and as I mentioned in my clinic, that's exactly what I did. Is I taught lifestyle to my patients, and we did many variations of lifestyle, from raising healthy families to learning how to detox. And so I always wanted to give a formula because here's the thing. This is the crazy thing. Like when you walk into a grocery store, not everything in there is necessarily vetted for your health. And in fact, many of those things in there are actually carcinogenic and endocrine disruptors and obesogens. So knowing how to even navigate a grocery store becomes incredibly important. Plus, we also have to look at if you are going to start to tack on these fasting windows, like how do you do that? And in what way are you going to organize it for yourself? Because the goal with a lifestyle, I just want to say this, that the goal with a lifestyle is to personalize it to you. So it's not to do what your best friend did or not to do what your sister did because and she lost weight at, but to actually customize it to you. This is the N of one. And this is where those of you that are going to take this information and you're going to go and you're going to teach it to other people, remember you are teaching it on a personal level to every single person. The other place we've gotten off with all of the health habits and all of the diet things is we are like, this is the best diet. The only best diet and lifestyle that works is the one that you can stick to it, the one that it fits into your other parts of your life, like family and work and your other obligations. And so and when you're building a lifestyle, you want to take all these tools that you know are going to be great for you. And then you want to look at your life and the demands of your life, and you want to match those two together. So you make it personal to you. I'll give you an example. One of the more fun things that I've done since I've been sharing fasting with the world is build fasting lifestyles for Jesse Itzler's mentor group. Jesse Itzler, if you don't know who he is married to Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx. But Jesse also was the founder of Zyco Coconut Water. He's an entrepreneur of his own right, part owner of Marquis Jets, part owner of the Atlantic Hawks, like beautiful man. And he heard me on a podcast and he asked me if I would teach him how to fast, but he was a vegetarian and he was an extreme athlete. So those were like two really interesting things that I had to take my tool set and look at his lifestyle and figure out how to match it. And so I worked with him, and then he decided to create an entrepreneurial group where he had all these high-performing people come into his group. And there was about 7 of us that were mentors that taught these high-performing entrepreneurs how, whatever our specialty was. So there was like a fitness guy, and there was a relationship coach, and there was a financial guy, and I was the fasting expert. So I would get on these calls with these entrepreneurs and I would ask them, first off, tell me about your lifestyle. And one of the interesting things about their lifestyle is that a lot of these entrepreneurs were family oriented. So they were like hardcore entrepreneurs, but then they also were dedicated to their family. And when I got on these calls and I started to ask them, like, tell me when you eat dinner, a lot of them were like, well, the kids go off to play sports and then we come back and we eat dinner at 8 o'clock, and then I get up and I work out at 6 o'clock. And so I had to take what I'm about to teach you, these principles of a fasting lifestyle, and first look at what mattered to them. Because if your health habits start to go in conflict with what matters to you, you're never going to stick at your health habits. Like the mama bears in my practice for many years told me that one of their big concerns was how, when they were fasting, what they said to their children, especially their teenage daughters, because they didn't, a lot of their daughters had eating disorders, and we were talking about that. And so we had to come up with, wait, okay, the mama bears want to fast, but they also don't want to sit down to dinner and just with a glass of water and model for their teenage daughters that they are avoiding food, especially if they had a teenage daughter that was already had an eating disorder. And so we came up with so many different ideas of how they could fast around that. So this is what I want you to understand as I go through 4 major principles of building a fasting lifestyle that's unique to you. And then you're going to hear this today through a lens of what's right for you. But then I want you to think about it also in terms of what's right for your client or your patient, because you're going to find there's no cookie cutter formula here. And this is what, honestly, I love about building a fasting lifestyle. Okay, so with that in mind, number one goal, or the number one tenet to building a fasting lifestyle, is what is your goal? So not everybody on here has a goal to lose weight. And honestly, I'm going to tell you that if your goal is to lose weight, it actually, you need more of an emotional goal. So let me give you an example of some things I would say to my patients when I would sit down with them, because what I found is that I had in my clinic like a 45-page intake where I would look at everybody's health. And a lot of women were, they were too shy to tell me they wanted to lose weight. And so they would put all other kinds of symptoms. And so I would repeat back to them their symptoms, like they don't have enough energy, they're not sleeping, they're depressed, they're forgetful, because so many of the people in my clinic that I worked with were perimenopausal and menopausal women. And so I took all those symptoms and I said 2 things. Okay, especially if there was a long list of symptoms. If you had a magic wand, or if I had a magic wand, and I could erase any of these symptoms, give me the top 3. And so I would always bring it into a focus, because when we are come out of our body and we're like, I'm depressed and I look in the mirror and I don't like how I look and I'm not sleeping and my joints hurt and I'm gaining weight, the brain starts spiraling. So one of the things that I did is I made sure that I got down to the real core parts of what they were looking for. And what was interesting when I asked the question of if I had a magic wand and I could completely get any of these symptoms away, sometimes the symptom they would tell me would be one they hadn't even put on their intake sheet, and that usually was losing weight. So we'd narrow down the symptoms first, and then the next question would be, is I would say, okay, if weight loss and energy and moods are your top 3 symptoms that you want to see go away, the next question I have for you is how will your life look different when those symptoms go away? Now, this is an incredibly important question, whether you're dealing with a patient or you're telling yourself, because the number on the scale has a lot of mixed baggage with it. What I learned is a lot of people are like, I want to be this weight because this is what I was when I was a teenager, but you're not a teenager anymore. What you want is the feeling you had about your body when you were that number. It's not the number you're chasing. It's the feeling you had about your body when that number on the scale looked a certain way. So I would often have to break that down with patients where I'd be like, okay, so when you sleep better, when you lose weight, when you aren't depressed, what does your life look like? And if they couldn't describe it, we stayed in that place for a very long time. And I would ask further questions like, how would your relationships feel better? And a lot of times, honestly, it came down to, well, my husband's in great shape. My friends are all super fit. And I feel really crummy because I'm carrying 30 pounds around. Okay, well, when you drop that, what will happen to those relationships? And it would always usually it would come back to, I would feel worthy. This is why we want to get to this emotional place of a person's goal. Because what so many people are searching for with the goal, their health and making these goals go away, is they want to just frickin' feel good about themselves. And we live in a world, remember, this patriarchal world that says you will feel good about yourself when you're a certain number on the scale. And so then we would sit and we would talk about it. Okay, you would feel like you'd feel comfortable in your own skin. Great. Like, how does that feel like when you're with your husband? You know, do you not feel good about yourself? And then talk to me, like, tell me about that. Or you're depressed all the time. Like I had this is how we got into so much detox in my clinic, is so many women would say, you know, I'm looking on paper, my life looks great. We have plenty of money. We live in a beautiful home. I drive nice cars. My kids are amazing, but I'm walking around depressed. And so then I would say to them, well, tell me what happens when the depression goes away. And they say, I would be able to enjoy all of that. I would move into gratitude. And so the goal can't be symptom relief. The goal can't be an emotion or a number on the scale. The goal has to have an emotion to it, because it's that emotional pull that is going to make us get over the hard moments. If it's all logical, this is what's happening in everybody's freaking like doctor's office, is they walk in and they're like, here you go. Here are the symptoms I have. And the doctor says, oh, your symptoms are this, 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 and this, and they give them a fancy diagnosis. And then the person goes, oh, okay, you know what's going on with me. And then they give them some medication, and then it becomes this logical like process. If I take the medication, the symptoms will go away. And then that's where the whack-a-mole starts, because what happens when the symptoms don't go away? I mean, I've sat with women before where the core root of their fatigue and their depression was they didn't have a purpose and they were searching for a purpose. And so we had to chat about a purpose before we chatted about a health plan, because the purpose, the lack of purpose, what was draining their energy. So whether you're trying to do this for yourself or you're trying to do this for your patients or your clients, when I say the number one like idea before you build a fasting lifestyle needs to be, what is your goal? Is it needs to have an emotion attached to that goal. What's going to happen when you have energy? What's going to happen when you lose weight? What's going to happen when you don't need Ozempic anymore? Whatever it is, who is that person on the other side of the symptom relief? And what is the feeling you are going after? So put in there, those of you that came here to learn about your own health, put in the chat, what are you searching for? Are you searching for feeling good in your skin? Were you proud of yourself? Are you searching for feeling worthy? Are you knowing that if you're in better health, your relationships would be better and you would have better connection with your spouse? What is it that you're looking for? Because that becomes what is going to pull you and move you in the right direction. Yeah, keep it going. Reduce stress. A lot of you are here to learn how to get pregnant. It's amazing. You know what? And so like that might be your next purpose of life, is to be a mom. Mental clarity and focus. Because when you have mental clarity and focus, you actually can be present with people. Your job is easier. So keep taking it down to that motivating moment. And again, this is those of you that are coaches, you learned this in our academy. Those of you that were in Nancy's Coach with Confidence group, you learned this. Like this is so key, because everybody wants to go to the outward expression of health. I want your goal to be an inward feeling, because once it's an inward feeling, now nobody can take that away from you. Make sense? Okay, so that's the first thing we're going to do when we look at building a fasting lifestyle. You can keep it coming. It's good. Second thing you're going to do is you're going to know that you've got this metabolic switch. And before I get into the sugar burner, if your goal is and we'll go through the different emotional goals here in a moment, but you're metabolically switching into the fat burning state to heal yourself. And in healing yourself without food, there are 6 different levels of healing that you get to choose what you dip into. So if you're also going to take this information and teach it to people, please keep in mind that this fasting length is not yours to decide for your client or your patient. It's for you to pull out of your patient and see what they can do. Like you might look at them. I had many times I looked at their intake and I was like, whoo, they need a 3-day water fast, but I got to get them at least trusting their body first. So let me start with 15 hours. But I looked at this fasting window like I looked at supplements or medications. We give people medication, we give people supplements for an amplified healing. Once I understood the fasting window, then all of a sudden what became important to me is knowing how to dip them in there so that their body can do what the supplement was doing or what the medication was doing. So the second rule to a fasting lifestyle is you are going to vary your fasts. And I'm going to repeat this again. Many of you read the chapter last night, but there are 6 different length fasts. And I always started, and we're going to talk about how you get somebody to start fasting, but I always started with intermittent fasting. I always told people that their first ledge that I wanted them to hold on to was somewhere around 12 to 13 hours. That, they would come to me and and this still happens with people that I coach. People come to me and they're like, oh my God, I want to do a 3-day water fast. And then I ask, have you fasted before? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, we're not going there first. We're going to the ledge of intermittent fasting, because at intermittent fasting, what happens there is we're priming the switch, and your body is going to have to click over and get over here into this fasting window and get used to it first before we can do anything. So it's like taking this switch and lubricating it. So at 13 to 15 hours, this is the classic intermittent fasting length. If you haven't been at that length or mastered that length, that's your first goal. That's your first step. What happens at 13 to 15 hours, like I mentioned yesterday, is we start to see inflammation go down. We start to send a message to the body that it needs to burn fat to make a ketone. We start to see growth hormone go up, which growth hormone is a prerequisite to all other hormones. It's a very powerful hormone. So you start to see growth hormone go up for both men and women. And if you are making ketones somewhere between 13 to 15 hours, ketones will go up into the brain and they will turn off hunger and they will start to make you feel a little more peaceful. So that was always for everybody. That was the first goal. Now, in that, or the first fasting step. Now, what's going to happen when you switch over into the fasting window is, for some of you, it's really uncomfortable. So just in full transparency, put in the chat how many of you are still finding it hard to do 13 to 15 hours. Just put me in the chat, because you're not alone and there's no judgment here. Yeah, a lot of you, not you, like a lot of you have been fasting for a while. But what I want you to know is that fast built, when you switch over, it is built off of a key principle in the body called hormetic stress. Hormetic stress is a good stress. And when you get a hormetic stress moment, what happens is your body goes, whoa, we're under stress. I'm going to need to go ahead and build myself stronger. And in that stress, it actually will repair itself so much more efficiently. One of the major problems that we have in today's society right now is everything has gotten way too comfortable for us. We can sit on our couch and pick up our phone, and we can order DoorDash, and we don't even leave our couch, and the food gets dropped off at our door. We have way too much comfort in our lives. And if you want to look at using these tools for longevity, or you want to look at improving yourself, you're going to have to get uncomfortable. One of my favorite quotes from the pandemic was somebody posted, a friend of mine on Facebook posted something that said, I can't wait to see who I'm going to become on the other side of this pandemic. And I was like, that's really great attitude. I like that. Yeah, I can't wait to see who I'm going to be on the other side. So when you are dipping into these new fasting lanes and they're uncomfortable, know that in the discomfort, the body heals. A fever is uncomfortable. Pain is uncomfortable. Sinus congestion is uncomfortable. Carrying extra weight around is uncomfortable. But the body goes into these discomfort moments to heal itself. So don't shy away from discomfort, because that's where you're going to start to really get what you're looking for with your healing. So the first level is 13 to 15 hours. So for your people who are like, I just want to kind of feel like I want my joints to move a little bit better. I want the hunger to go down. I want a little bit of better mental clarity. I want to burn a little bit of fat. 13 to 15 hours of intermittent fasting is great. One of the most beautiful messages or studies that was ever done on women was done on women after cancer treatment. And they found that women who did 13 hours of fasting post traditional breast cancer treatment, that they actually had a 64% less reoccurrence of that cancer when they fasted 13 hours. Most everybody I've met can do a 13-hour fast. So that's your first step for you, for your patients, regardless of your goal. Now, the next step, if you have a goal of needing to detox yourself, or you have a goal of anti-aging, then the next level, the 17-hour fast, is phenomenal. And that is where you start to stimulate autophagy. And autophagy is where your brilliant body is like, wait a second, food hasn't come in here. So I think I should probably become a better version of myself. With autophagy, what we know is that when you trigger autophagy inside a cell, the intelligence inside that cell looks around and says, hey, wait a second, there are some problems in this cell. We've got some inner cellular parts that aren't working. We've got some bacteria and viruses that shouldn't be here. We're going to need to make this cell better. So it starts to clean the cell up and make it a better cell. And it starts at 17 hours. Now, a study I quote a lot, and a lot of you have heard me say this, is what we learned in COVID, which was that at 17 hours of fasting, when you stimulate autophagy, viruses do not have their own energy system. So when you go into a state of autophagy at 17 hours and switch over from that sugar burner into that fat burner place, and a virus comes into a cell in a state of autophagy, that virus cannot replicate. So if you have a cell that's saturated with glucose and the virus comes into a glucose riddled cell, the virus is like, woohoo, food. And it eats all the glucose and then it spits out of that cell and it replicates. This is what we should have done during COVID, is we should have taught everybody to switch over into their fat burning system and to start to stimulate autophagy so our own inner cellular parts could have healed everybody. I have proven this study over and over and over again. When I found out I had COVID, I tested positive on a Sunday morning. I tested myself every single day. I fasted, and by Thursday, I tested negative. I then took all the things I had learned about autophagy and shutting down viral replication. I taught every one of my patients. I taught my online community, and every single person who put themselves into 17 hours of fasting or longer saw that they moved through COVID so much quicker because there was nothing for the virus to munch on. So when we are in this place of autophagy, we shut down viral replication. And it's not just COVID. Animals do this when they're not feeling well, they don't eat. So the other place we use autophagy is like when you've gone on vacation. And then all of a sudden you come back and you're like, whoa, I really overdid it. Okay, throw some 17-hour fasts in there. Or when you went on over after Christmas, this is why we do a big 3-day water fast after Christmas, is that all of a sudden you've overdone it and you're like, I need to course correct. Your 17-hour fast is it. Now, autophagy happens between 17 and 72 hours. So it starts at 17 and it peaks at 72. So if you're training somebody to really use autophagy for healing, understand you may even have to go a little longer. But when we're looking at a person's goal, if detox is their goal, if longevity is their goal, if they've just been horrendously eating Western standard process and you want to clean all that up, then if that's your goal, then we go into a state of autophagy. 24 hours is where the intestinal stem cells start to reboot themselves. And you can actually start to heal the inner lining of a gut. So I used the 24-hour fast for any of my patients who had been on a lot of antibiotics, couldn't get off sugar cravings, and I'll explain why here in a second. People who had SIBO is great for people with SIBO, or anybody who had bloated, constipation, anybody who was struggling to repair their gut. I would have them switch over into a fasted state and do a 24-hour fast anywhere from once a week to 3 times a week, depending on how severe their gut problems were. And honestly, what I noticed was that once I did that, my patients didn't need supplements. And I got to tell you again that the job of the doctor is to teach. The job of the doctor is to help that patient heal themselves. The job is not to sell supplements so that you make money. So I had to check myself and be like, hey, if I can get my patients well by giving them 24-hour fasts here and then there, and my supplement sales go down, that's on me. I got to look at myself in the mirror and ask myself, why I'm doing this. Now, I'm not saying doctors shouldn't make money. I'm just saying that supplements are meant to supplement. They are meant to go in with a little bit of help and then back out. You are not meant to be on supplements all the time. And so I found if I put people more often into these 24-hour fasts, we started to see bloating go away, constipation changed, leaky gut situations changed, and cravings changed. And this is because in a 24-hour fast, what ends up happening is all the bad goes away. There's a rebooting of these intestinal stem cells. The bacteria spread apart and they get ready for food to come in. So I used the 24-hour fast like a supplement. I just said, hey, this is what we're going to do. You're going to intermittent fast 5 days a week, 1 day at 13 hours, 1 day a week. You're going to stretch that to 24 hours, and 1 day a week you're not going to fast. That was it's called a 5-1-1. I talked about it the other day. That was a very common pattern. Now, those of you who have Fast Like a Girl, please know all of the protocols that were like my tried and true protocols for different conditions using what I'm teaching you today. Many of those protocols are in Fast Like a Girl in the back of the book. So if you didn't look at the appendix, I put them back there for you. The main ones like thyroid problems, fertility, diabetes, I put the main ones that I used in my clinic back there. And you can kind of see how I did different patterns based off of how much healing they needed in the fasted state. Okay, then the next level fast was 36 hours, and 36 hours was really powerful because the research I saw was actually done on people who were for Ramadan. And for Ramadan, what the research showed was that a lot of people were doing 24 hours, and that when they did that over time, they ended up actually unsticking their weight. So if those of you that read chapter 2 last night in Fast Like a Girl, what I put in there was a study where they looked, and it was both men and women, and they looked at doing 36 hours of a fast and then 12 hours of eating, and then 36 hours of fasting and then 12 hours of eating. And they did that over a 30-day period. And they found that people who were weight loss resistant finally lost weight. And the place they lost the most weight in was their belly, which is where everybody wants to lose weight. So when I read that study, I started throwing 36-hour fasts at people who were really weight loss resistant. So if that's you, you may need to train yourself to get into this 36-hour state so that you can just unhook your weight. Some of you may only need to do it once, and some of you might need to do it more often. So that's the 36-hour. 48 hours was resetting your dopamine receptor sites. And what was interesting on that one is the research showed that when you put a person into a 48-hour fast, that you are putting them into a dopamine deprived state. Okay, we're back at a hormetic stressor. So if you put somebody in a dopamine deprived state, what ends up happening is the dopamine system in the brain starts to repair, and new receptor sites show up. New dopamine, they're called D2 receptor sites, show up. So your brain actually fixes the dopamine system and makes new receptor sites so that when you are ready to eat again, you actually have more receptor sites available for you to enjoy that food. Now, I looked at that study mixed with other studies that were showing that people who are obese often require more food to get the same emotional high because they have been using food to be able to give them a dopamine hit. But dopamine is the neurotransmitter of more. It is not the neurotransmitter of enough. So this is addiction. This is why people are food addicted. They get some dopamine. They're like, oh my God, that feels so good. Let me go get more. But the next time they need more of it. And now the next thing they know is that they're eating more. And one bag of potato chips turns into 2 bags of potato chips. And it just keeps snowballing. And one of the ways you break that cycle is you put them into a 48-hour fast. And now you've rebooted the whole system. So, and then what we saw when we were first learning with all these different fasting lengths, I was not only doing the different fasting lengths with my patients, but we went to my YouTube channel and we did something called Fast Training Week, where every fast training week, we would practice different level fasts. And so one of the fasts that we practiced was this 48-hour fast, because I wanted to see how everybody did. And what we got back was how many people felt like their moods were starting to lift long after the 48 hours fast was completely over. So it's a beautiful fasting length for food addiction, for depression, to just reset yourself so that you're sensitive to dopamine again. So that's 48 hours. And then 72 hours is for people to reset their whole immune system so that the immune system works well. It was based off of Walter Longo's research, where he showed that if people go into traditional chemotherapy work, one of the biggest challenges of chemotherapy is it completely decimates a person's immune system. And so they come out of chemotherapy and their immune system is completely depleted. But what he found is if he could put people into a 36-hour fast, when they went in to chemotherapy, that when they came out of it, there was a rebooting of the white blood cells and a whole recalibration of the immune system. This was his famous fast. And so I started to look at the 72-hour fast as an immune system reboot. Again, something we should have done throughout all of COVID is teach people to fast. So because the immune systems could have been rebooted. So that's what you're looking at when the second step of a fasting lifestyle. The first is, what's your goal? What's the emotional reason? And then the second is, you're going to vary your fasting lengths, and the variation is up to you. And if you're leading patients through this, the variation is up for you and the patient to talk about. I had a beautiful friend who really struggled to lose weight forever. And I tried to get her to fast and build a fasting lifestyle. And she struggled around 17 hours. She's like, I can't. I don't think that fasting's for me. And she was really, really struggling. And then she had a lot of stress in her life. And then a year later, she finally got to a place where she could do a 36-hour fast. And I hadn't seen her in a couple of weeks. And she showed up at my house in LA. And I looked at her, I was like, oh my God, what happened? And she goes, I finally was able to do a 36-hour fast. And now it's coming off. The weight's coming off. So, and then she was able to do another one. And this is for those of you that are coaching people, or you're stuck with your own motivation. You don't need motivation, you need momentum. So sometimes we put people into smaller fasts just so they can get a feeling of like, oh my God, I can do this. This feels really good. I'm healing myself. Knowing that we're trying to get them to 48 hours or 72, we're trying to lead them down that path. So when I say you're varying your fasting length, you're varying it according to your lifestyle needs, and you're varying it according to your goal. Okay. The third step in building a fasting lifestyle is you're going to vary your food. Now, I am going to go through, I mentioned this yesterday, but I want to go through what I consider to be two really important food styles. I've mentioned it a little bit. And I want to go through the foundational 5 so you can see how you would use it in this fasting lifestyle. Because here's what I'm hoping you guys all see, and tell me if you're starting to see this. What's so beautiful about building a fasting lifestyle is when you customize it for you, when you stop counting everything, when you stop disciplining the shit out of yourself, and you work with your lifestyle and you kind of have a rhythm with it, it becomes effortless. And the next thing you know, you're just naturally fasting and eating, and everything just becomes easy. This is why I love the fasting lifestyle. Put it in there if you're like, yeah, it got easier and easier. Because yeah, second nature, exactly. It just, literally becomes so incredibly easy. Yeah, thank you. So when we look at the rules of the sugar burner system, let me start with the foundational 5 first. I think these are the 5 things that everybody should be focused on, both men and women. The first, and even kids, the first is blood sugar matters, calories don't. Now, I want to tell you, I've gotten a lot of criticism for not being a poster child for calorie counting. Here's why I'm not a poster child for calorie counting. Because nobody can stick to it forever. But we can stick to blood sugar and reading our blood sugar. So one of the things I always did with every single patient was we started off building this fasting lifestyle. So I asked them what their goals were. I looked at what the pattern of when they were eating. Like I would ask them, like, when do you stop dinner and when do you normally eat breakfast? And I would calculate that to figure out how I was going to get them to 13 to 15 hours. So we would have that conversation. And then I would put a CGM on them. or we did before we had CGMs, I would have them buy like a little Keto Mojo. And I would have them just start to eat for the first couple of days, everything they normally eat. And then I would have them send me their numbers, because what I wanted them to see was what their current diet was doing to their blood sugar. And the reason that was so important is because now, like the actress I told you about, she's like, with the oat milk, I saw somebody say something about oat milk. Yeah, oat milk is too high in glucose. It will pull you out of a fasted state. She loved oat milk. And so when we put a CGM on her, it's also full of chemicals. Oat milk spiked her blood sugar so high. And she saw it and she was like, oh my God, oat milk. Whoa. Okay, what are my other choices? So instead of me wagging my finger and saying, no more oat milk, I let the glucose monitor show her, and now she's internally motivated. These little tricks are so important to motivate yourself and to motivate your clients. It has to be internal motivation. They've already been in their doctor's office over and over and over again, shamed and told what to do. They failed at 1,000 diets. They've already got the messaging that they have failed. So let's make them driven internally. So I would have them start to look at their blood sugar. And for the first 2 weeks, what I would do is I would start to just pick apart their current diet based off of what their glucose monitor was showing me. Highly recommend it. And you can get glucose monitors almost anywhere now. So like you guys are all asking me about milks, put your own glucose monitor on and test it. It's because we could spend hours on milks, but everybody reacts differently to different milks. So, okay, second rule of the foundational 5 over here on Sugar Burner is that eat nature's carbs, not human-made carbs. The whole thing on carb counting and all of that just got so crazy, and it put women into more restriction and more shame and got everybody debating how many carbs, how many proteins, things like that. So I got so tired of answering all the carb questions that I was like, okay, let's just do this. Eat nature's carbs, which means fruits, vegetables, potatoes, squashes, anything that came directly from the earth and wasn't human made. It wasn't refined, processed carbohydrates that come in a box. Just start looking at your meal and go, wait a second, did nature make this or did a human make this in a lab? And that really freed women up to be able to go, okay, like carbs aren't bad. It's processed carbs that are bad. So that was number 2. Eat nature's carbs, not human-made carbs. These are all outlined in Eat Like a Girl. Number 3 was feed your microbes, not your taste buds. So we have a tendency to think that our taste buds are because we're either disciplined or not disciplined. Your microbes in your gut are actually telling you what to crave. So the example I always use, and some of you have heard me say this, and I will tell this real quickly if you've already heard it, is I had a man come to me in Jesse's group who was like about 200 pounds overweight. And when I asked him why he struggled, he asked for weight loss help. And when I asked him why he was struggling with weight loss, he said he was food addicted. Okay, that was a signal to me that I didn't need to restrict food. I needed to change his microbes so that he craved different foods. And so what we ended up doing was we ended up like working on these eating windows and fasting windows. I started with the fasted state, knowing that if I could get him to a 24-hour fast, we would start to repair his microbes, and then his cravings would start to change. And over several months, I just worked on him adding in fiber, adding in polyphenol foods, adding in prebiotics and probiotics foods, and at the same time, giving him this idea of eating windows, fasting windows. I had him add food in and elongate his fasting window before I had him change any of the buffalo wings or any of the crappy food that he was eating. And what miraculously happened is after about 4 to 5 months, he started craving better foods. So if you have a challenge with food addiction, start by feeding your microbes good things. Prebiotic, probiotic, polyphenol foods. Both books are completely charted out with lists of all of that. Okay, foundational rule number 4. Protein is the hero macronutrient. We need, instead of this idea of like this rhetoric of 30 grams of protein, 30 grams of protein. I love the meme that's gone around that's like, I'm sorry, I can't show up to work today because I'm too busy counting my protein. What I'm trying to do is to get everybody off of counting. Counting adds rigidity. And when we get rigid and we can't sustain that. So just add protein with every meal. Just put protein with every meal. It'll stabilize your blood sugar. It'll give you amino acids, whether you're whether you are a person who is, vegan or not, add your typical protein in there. And just make sure every meal when you sit down is there protein. Okay, so that's rule number 4. And then rule number 5 is fat doesn't make you fat. So along with adding protein in there, let's start drizzling fat. So I started drizzling olive oil all over all of my foods. I started just having people add things in. Those 5 rules really are everybody could follow. Everybody can follow. And the only thing that I am taking out is the calorie counting. And the only other thing that I'm taking out is your processed carbohydrates. But otherwise, I'm asking you to add in protein, add in good fat, and add in a fasting window. Now we're not in deprivation, because when the brain hears you can't do something, the brain starts to want to do it more. So I found that if I did that, then the fasting lifestyle became much easier. Then the other thing that I did was I started to look at, does this person need to go into low carb and high carb according to their hormones? And we talked about this yesterday. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail for the sake of time, but once they had the 5 foundational rules down, you guys can do that this week. You can do that this week with your clients. You can do it today with your clients, this foundational 5. And then you teach them just a 13-hour, 14-hour, 15-hour fasting window. You could just do that and you would be good. So if that is a hell of a starting point. It's where, and then you have put a CGM on, and I didn't detox them with the first month. The first month was those principles. And I would have them report it back to me. I would do food diaries. We had ways to communicate. I'd have them send me their blood sugar readings so that I could see how this foundational 5 mixed with the 13 to 15-hour eating window worked. And every single person after 1 month was like, whoa, I feel better. So don't overcomplicate it. Then I went into, okay, we're going to have some days that are low carb. I call that ketobiotic. And we're going to have some days that are high carb. I call that hormone feasting. But the carbs are still going to be nature's carbs. And we're going to have some days where we go into moderate protein, and some days we're going to power up your protein. But we're not going into this obsession over numbers. And then I mapped all that to hormones. So that's the big part of a fasting lifestyle, is building it according, thank you for the people who posted this in there, is build it according to your goal, your lifestyle, and let's make it really easy. so we can succeed at it. And then we get momentum. And then what would happen is my patients would come back and they would be like, okay, what do I do now? As opposed to me being like, hey, I know you're struggling right now, but guess what? Now we're going to detox. I wanted them to get some momentum with their health because now all of a sudden I could teach them anything. The last principle of a fasting lifestyle, and one that I think is incredibly important, is that why do we do health in a silo? Why don't we do it in community? And so this was a big part of what I did in my office is I would start to gather the mama bears and we would have these meetings once a week or once a month where I would teach on different health topics, but then I would make sure people got to know each other. And then we created the Reset Academy, and we created that for people who weren't living in my town, but so that we could build community. And then COVID hit and we brought them all together. You will succeed at your health goals when you are doing health with people that are doing it the way that you're doing it. I sat with too many patients that were like, I was doing well. And then my husband told me that my husband wanted to go out to dinner and I just blew it. Or my husband didn't have his eating buddy anymore. And so I couldn't stick to it because I didn't want it to affect my marriage. Like there were so many conversations where some person got in the way of another person's health dream. So I was like, let's just get them all. I actually ended up, because my clinic was a lifestyle clinic, well, before I closed it, it was like a rule that if you were coming into my clinic, the whole family had to come, because it didn't make sense to me that one person would get healthy and the rest of the family would stay sick. But then I also was so intimately involved with the one person trying to get healthy that I saw that it was the kids and the husband and the spouse and the community that was actually pulling them away from their goals. So I'm like, come on, everybody, let's just all come together and do health together. It's the easiest way to do it. So if you are going to teach this out in the world, please keep that in mind. So 4 things to building out a fasting lifestyle. Know what your goal is. It needs to have a big emotion attached to it. Know what fasting lengths you're going to do. How are you going to vary them? Know how you're going to vary your food according to high carb, low carb, and following this foundational 5, and gather your community. Some of you, if you haven't joined our academy, come join us over there. We have an incredible lineup of people and experts that are surrounding you with knowledge so that you don't fall prey to what the world will tell you to do or the people around you. That's a fasting lifestyle. That's how you build it, and you build it unique to the person. Now, some of you, as you're training and learning people to go into this longer fast, what I would encourage you to do is to be able to implement the foundational 5 first, and then take this day, like if they eat breakfast at 7 in the morning, ask them to push it back a half hour. And I used to say, push it back a half hour, push it back an hour until you're uncomfortable. And once you're uncomfortable, sit there for 15 minutes, sit there for 30 minutes, however long they could sit there, so that their body would start to become comfortable again. It would get used to this new fasting length. So let's say the person ate breakfast at 7 o'clock. I would say, okay, we're going to work on the foundational 5. And then all I want you to do is tomorrow morning, I want you to eat breakfast at 7:30. And then they would message me and I would say, how was that? And they would say, easy. Okay, great. Next day, I want you to now eat breakfast at 8 o'clock. And then they would respond back and I would say, okay, how was that? And they would say, still easy. Great. Next day, we're going to 8:30. We played in the first month of working with patients. I would really be close to them as they built their fasting lifestyles. And one of the things is that when it got hard, when they were like, okay, I'm now I'm at 9 a.m. and I'm struggling, I would say, okay, stay there, stay there. Let's stay at 9 o'clock in the morning is the time you're going to break your fast. We're just going to stay there. And then when that gets easy, let me know. And then they would, like, a week later say it's easy. Okay, great. Now we're going to 10 o'clock. So that's how I crept them into a fasting lifestyle. A little bit of discomfort, not too much of discomfort, so that they could start to find their own rhythm. Okay. Does that make sense? That is how you use this formula. And I wrote about it in both books. Now, I want to talk about one more thing before we close this down. And that is, what do you do when symptoms appear? Again, discomfort is okay. If you're in discomfort, usually the discomforts when people switch over look like I'm dizzy. Okay, well, if they're too dizzy, then they might need to break the fast. Or I have a headache. Okay, well, maybe you're actually breaking, maybe there's a detox going on in the brain. Or maybe they're like one of the third ones that I heard a lot is I got a rash. Oh my God, your body's trying to get something out of you. I'm constipated. I've got diarrhea. I'm bloated. These are the things I would break down. Oh my God, look at, and every time my favorite thing to do is like people would come in. I'll never forget this woman. She was so great. And she was like very ornery. My staff was like, here she comes. And nobody liked her, but I liked her because she just told it like it is. And she walked in after going into her 36-hour fast. And she's like, look at my eyes. They are red. They are watery. I have mucus coming out of them. What did you do to me? And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Look what your body is doing. It found an orifice. It found an output to push toxins out. It's using your eyes to put toxins out. And I high-fived her and she was like, what? I was like, your body is healing. You've just been taught that by a healthcare system that symptoms are bad. Symptoms are not bad. They are messages from the body about what is going on. And what your body is telling me right now is it is pushing stuff out and it's going out your eyes. And so it was a beautiful reframe for her to trust her body and for her to understand she's doing this. It wasn't anything I did. It was, I taught her how to metabolically switch and go into these healing states. And the symptoms are telling us. Then we started to break down and I was like, well, you have the most amount of mitochondria in your eyes. So, okay, maybe your mitochondria are really struggling. Let's look at like how we can do some great mitochondrial health. Like I had red light in my office. And so I had her go sit in front of the red light with her eyes closed and like get some red light in there. We started to look at like methylene blue eye drops. Like, could I get some, like, how do we support those mitochondria? I used that symptom to be able to see. And some of you joining us in the certification course, you're going to learn all this. But I used the symptom to guide us to the next step. To me, that is complete collaboration with the body. It's an honoring that the body is healing and that actually what you're experiencing, I know it sucks, but your symptoms are telling me something. And so let's read it together. And then let's figure out how we can look at what your body needs. To me, that's what a health coach should be doing. That's what a doctor should be doing, is honoring the wisdom of the body and learning how to translate it for the patient, not telling the patient that they're wrong and they should just shut the symptoms up. That is true health, in my opinion. So tomorrow I'm going to go into that more. I'm watching your comments. I know a lot of you want to know more about the certification course. I'll go into that more. But what I want you to see is that what I've been trying to do is build on why we need metabolic health, why metabolic switching to our hormones is so important, and why when we build a fasting lifestyle, it needs to be for us, not for anybody else, because otherwise we are trained whatever doctor you are or whatever health professional you are, we are so trained that we're the ones that know everything. That's not true. The one that knows everything is the body. And you are partnering with the body so that you can read the body and you can work with that body so that that person can heal themselves. And so to me, that's what a fasting lifestyle is. So I hope that makes sense. I hope you're like grabbing this. And tomorrow I'll go through in more details, more protocols. I want to go through, I haven't gone through breaking a fast, so I want to go through that tomorrow. And we'll go through the certification course for those of you that want to continue there. And I want you to see how you can own this for yourself, how you can look at your body through a different lens, and how you can start to teach that to other people. Make sense? Cool. Okay, appreciate you all. And those of you in my Reset Academy, I will be doing the coffee chat tomorrow. So I will see you there. And then I'll be with you, the rest of you, at noon. But keep playing. Now go write out your own fasting lifestyle, please. Based off those 4 principles, write what a weekly scenario might look like. And tomorrow we can talk deeper about it. I will be opening up for questions. Don't worry. So that's coming this weekend. So you can all ask me questions, and I just appreciate you. So keep believing. Have an awesome day.